Hello and welcome. In this video we're building a React slider. As you are seeing on the screen, I will reload again the page. This is our React slider, which is responsive, so it supports video and images. This is how it looks on the smallest screen. So let's get started. First we'll work on the structure of the slider. Each slide will be an li. Inside of it there will be a div and either a picture or a video. A picture will be using picture to be able to display different source for different screen resolution. Now the group of li will be wrapped in a ul that have a display flags, so they could be stacked horizontally in a row. The wall ul will be wrapped in a class wrapper div that will have a 100% as a value and overflow hidden, so the part of the slide that overflows the screen will be hidden. So here I have already created a React application with create React app, and I have changed the app.js to add some structure like a header and a body, so the slider will be in the middle. So I already created this header here and the body. Plus I have added some style sheet. So this style sheet is not related to slider. This is for the background here and the header and the body of the page. Plus I have created a data folder with the slide data. So this is an array of URLs. It contains video and images, and each object has a type, so we could identify the item, whether it's a video or images, once we load this object. So now we're ready to start building the slider. The first thing we'll create in the src, I will create a folder called it component. So I'll have then a folder called slider. Inside of it a file, a component called slider.js. This file will add a functional component inside of it, right? Sorry, I mean slider. It's not slide, it's slider. This file will be the main file for the slider. So this is the file. The slider will be as we have, as I showed you here in this photo slide here. First we'll have a wrapper. So we'll have a div called wrapper and ul, then li. Inside of it there will be either a picture or a video. Now in terms of React, in terms of component, we will have a component called picture and component called video. So let's create those two. So here let's add both components, so we can create a slide video.js and another one we call it slide image.js. Now in the slider.js we'll add class wrapper to the div. Inside of it, as we have agreed, there will be a ul. For the li, we need to loop the array of the media, images or video. So first we'll request the array as a prop. So we'll have here an array of photos. Here we loop, we'll map through the photos, returning each photo. So instead of naming it photo, I prefer slides, because it's not just photo, it can be video or photo, so slides is more clear. So here slide, we loop through each slide and will return an image or a slide video, depend on the type of each slide. So we'll check for the type. We can do it here like this. So if slide dot type equal to image, we'll return the slide image, else we return the slide, we name it slide video. So here we need to import both. Let me remove the import React, because with new React you don't need to import the React. We'll import first the image, the slide image from slide image. The same for the video. Alright, now let's create the slide image and video. So inside the slide image, create a function and we'll export default that function. Now there will be as I said, a picture here, and it will contain different source. Of course, we need a slide as a prop. We need access to the slide to get the URL, and I'll paste here the code for the slide, so it will have different sources. Here in our case we only have one size, but you could have as many sizes as you need for each resolution, or whatever the query you need to apply it for. But in the end, it's important to put an image, which in case the picture is not supported by a browser, the image will work as a fallback. Alright, this is for the image. Now for the video, so for the video, it will have the default control of the HTML and the autoplay plus muted for it to autoplay. Then we'll have a single source, which is an MP4 video. Of course, we'll need the slide in the prop. So here, back to our slider.js, we'll give for each component the slide. Alright, so we need to add the slide component here in the app slider. Alright, and we'll need to give it the photos or the slides array. So we'll import slides from data slides, and we'll give it as a prop to the slider. So now we can check in the browser, and here it is. As you can see, we haven't added any style or any width restriction. As you can see, the photo are overflowing a little bit, and they are displayed in their natural width and height. So we'll fix this in a second. Now we'll start by adding some CSS to our slider. Alright, so after I installed with yarn add style component, I need to import the library. So I'll import the styled. Using the style, I will create a new component here. I will name it wrapper with capital W. Now the styled component allow us to add CSS inside JavaScript. So each component will have its style attached to it. So for the wrapper, if you remember, we said it will have an overflow hidden. So with a width of 100 and a position relative. So we add the styles. Now wrapper, we'll need to use it instead of the div with the class wrapper. As you can see, this is a component. Now next we can target the child element, so we can target the UL. As you noticed here, we forgot to add the LI. So here we'll return the LI first. Now inside the LI we'll return, alright, whether slide image or slide video. Next we'll target the UL child element and we'll give it a display flex with position relative for margin 0, padding 0, and the list style will be none. For the LI, for the width, we'll add the width of, here we need to add the min width because the width won't work, because the flex will control the width. This will be calculated with JavaScript, but for now we'll set any number. So this is for the min width, the same for the max width. As I told you, if you use width, it won't apply, nothing will happen for your custom width because flex will be controlling it and you cannot override it. So to override the width applied by flex, we'll use the min width and max width. Next we'll add some padding for the LI on the left and right and bottom. We'll leave the top 0 with no padding. So now this is it. Next we will style the slide video and slide image. So we need to import the style for both components. For the slide image, I'll create a new component. It's a style picture component that contains the style sheet, and I will replace the picture with my new component. Now for the style picture, it will render as a picture element attaching to it these styles here through a auto-generated class also that is attached to the element picture. Now here concerning the styles, we have the width of 100%, height also the same, background color a dark blue that is clearer than a little bit clearer than the background of the body of the website. And this also targets the image. So here we are targeting the image and we're giving it a width and height of 100%, a position relative. Here we added the opacity of 1 and the transition for the opacity with 125 milliseconds with a delay of 450 milliseconds. For the user select, we set it to none, so the user can't select the image, and the display will be blocked for the image. Now for the styled video, the same thing. I'll copy these styles. Now as you can see, they are the same actually to the image. We have the width and height 100 for both the div and the video element, which we are targeting here. Position relative, the opacity is 1, and we have transition on the opacity. You select none, display it. Alright, so if we go to our browser and check our application, here it is. This is our slider. If we check our main example, we need to center the active slide. So here we have the active slide. Of course, by default it will be the first slide, which is slide number 0 in the array. We need to center this element. Now to center this element, if I go back to the schema photo here, so I need to push the UL, which wraps the list of slides. I need to push it. Now to push the UL I will modify for the translate the x and add to the translate x some value. Now the value will be 100% of the screen minus the slide element divided by 2. So here back to my slider.js. So we'll need to add the, here we'll have some calculation. We can use the interpolation here to add some JavaScript calculation. So we'll have the, as we said, minus, here's the min width, which is 40, minus 40. This is the width of each slide, of a slide. Then we'll divide the result by 2, and we'll add to it the unit, which will be viewport width, 0 and 0 for the y and z, since we are using the translate 3D. Now, as you can see, it is already applied. Now, to be able to control this slider programmatically, we need an index. So the index will tell us at which slide we are. For example, by default, it will be 0. Here we're at index 0. If the index is 1, it means that this is the active slide. Based on the index, we can position the slider. So let's add first the index. It will be a state for the slider component. So we'll import use state from React, and we use it here inside the slider function component. So it will be a slide index, and we can change it with set slide index, use state. So we have now created a slide index state. Using the slide index, we can control the position of our slider. Now, to control the position of the slider, we need to create a track component. This track component will be affected by the index and the width of the li. So here, the track component need to receive the index. He check if the index value is, let's say, 1. The track component need to show the slide index here, the 1. So remember, the array is 0 based. So this is 0. This is the slide 1. So this slide 1 need to be centered. We will change the translate x of the track to minus the width of a slide multiplied by the index. So here, if the index is 1, okay, all right, we'll move it. We will move it the width of the li. So let's say here it is 40. So we'll move it 40. All right, which will center the specified index. So if index is 1, slide number 1 will be centered. So if index is 2, then we'll move 2 slide. All right, let's apply it. Now here we need to create a new file. I will name it track.js. Inside of it there will be a component. Now for the track, it will need the, all right, we'll receive the prop as the parameter. Now what will return is a styled component. So we'll import the styled component, and we'll create a component. We'll name it styled track, which will be returning. Now inside the styled track, we'll be returning the props.children, which is the slider. Now I'll send the props to styled track. Now styled track, all right, we'll have, as we said, the transform translate 3D. All right, now here what we will do is multiply the slider width. So we'll expect to have the prop slider width. We multiply it by the slider index. So we'll also expect the slide index. We'll also expect to have the slide index in the props, and that's it. we'll add the unit, which will be viewport width. Now for the X and Y, it will be, for the Y and Z will be 0. So that's it. Next, we'll be adding a transition for this, for the transformation. Here I'll paste it. I have it in my clipboard. So the transition will be for the transform, 300 milliseconds the duration, 0 second for the delay. Now the function, the timing function will be cubic Bezier. Some values I have copied from another example. All right, so this is it. Now we need to export the track, and I need to import it in my slider. So I'll import track from track, and I'll wrap my slider with the track. So if I go back here, as I explained, the track will wrap the word slider. So track. For the track, of course, we need to give it the slide index and the slide width. Now for the slide width, it will be 40. So it will be equal to 40. All right. Later on, we'll be working on the slider width to be calculated programmatically by JavaScript. Oh, sorry, I made here a mistake. The track will be inside the wrapper. All right. So we'll move the track inside the wrapper. All right. So now by default the slide index will be 0. Let's make sure all is working. If I reload. All right. Now if I add the index to 1, we forget also to add a key for the list. So a key would be an index, would be I. All right, here we are using the slider instead of slide. It should be, of course, minus. It should be negative. So this is the 1, as you can see, with the animation working as expected. Now if I set the index to 2, all right. So it is working. This is the second slide. Let's put it to, we have 4, I guess, of course. All right, this is the 4th one. All right, great. So we have the index here connected to the slider. Now what we need to do is to add the control, the navigation. So here we need to add these arrow navigation to move the slider next and previous. So the arrow navigation will be beside the track. So we need to wrap them, both the arrow navigation and the slider, the track, in a div class with a class slider. So let's do this now. Here first I will wrap the track with a div dot slider. All right, now inside the slider we have the track. Next to the track we'll have the controls, which will be created very shortly. It will be a component that will exist here besides the slider.js. So we'll create a new file, controls.js. Inside of it there will be a component. All right, so JS. All right, and of course we'll export default the controls to return a div with 2 buttons. All right, one for the previous and one for the next. Now each button, inside of it there will be a div and a span. Now inside the spans there will I will put an SVG. I will name it chevron. Now the SVG will be in its component. So there will be a component that we will create very shortly, the chevron. All right. So I'll copy the same HTML structure for the second button. Now here I'll create the component chevron.js and I'll copy paste the component. So to give you a quick tour on the component, first we are using the styled to style our SVG here. So we are styling our SVG with 100 for the width and height, and we are removing the pointer event so it won't be affected by clicks. All right, and this SVG represent a chevron, as you will see. All right, so here in the controls we'll import the chevron along with the styled, so we'll be using both. Now we need to add styles to this div here, so we'll create a new component. We'll name it styled div, and we'll replace our div here with the new component. Now the styles for this component will be, it will have a width and height of 100%. The position will be absolute with top 0. The display will be flex. The justify content space between for the horizontal alignment, so align items center for the vertical alignment. And the pointer event will be none. The Z index will be 10, the opacity will be 1. So here we are specifying a pointer event none for the div, so it won't mask any clickable item below it, but because this div, as we can see here, it's 100% of the width and height of the slider. Now we set the pointer event none, but we'll activate it for the button. So now targeting the button here, I will activate the pointer event for the button, so it will be activated only for the button. The position will be relative, and I will add a padding of 20 pixels for the button. Now this padding will allow the button to have an extra clickable area of 20 pixels. All right, now we need to import this control inside the slider. All right, now in the slider we have a small mistake here. This will be class name for this div. Now I'll import the control and I'll use them here below the track, besides the tracks. We already are importing them, so let me make sure. Okay, all right, so these are the arrows. Back to the controls, this is button, and I have made here a mistake. Should be button, not bottom, button. Now we need to rotate the first one, so button. So we'll target the first one with ends-child of 1, and we'll rotate it to 180 degree. All right, now, all right, so this is the rotation. What next? We need to target now the div inside the button. As if we have a look at the structure, we have a div, so we need to target the div. Now for the div I will add a height and width of 50 pixels, so it will be a 50 pixel square. The position will be relative. I will add an orange border with a dark blue background color. The color will be white and the border radius will be 4 pixels. Now by default the opacity will be 0. We'll add a transition for the opacity of 2 milliseconds and a transition for the background color, and we'll add a hover. So when the mouse hover this square, will flip the colors, so the background will be orange and color of the text will be black. Now the opacity is 0. We need to activate, or we need to set the opacity to 1 once the mouse hovers the slider anywhere in the slider. Now to do this, to be able to do this, we'll target the div.slider, which doesn't exist in this component but exists in the slider. So we'll target the div.slider on the hover, and then we'll add the end. The end means this element. What is this element? Here we'll add the root. this element will be the style div. All right, so we'll target this element, then we'll target the child button, and then we'll target the div, which is this div here inside the button. Now here, once we hover the slider, the opacity will be 1. So it will be the button. This div will be visible. So if I go to my browser, all right, so it is hidden. Once I hover the slider, it will be visible. Next, I'll add some style to the span, which I'll copy them here. So the span, which wraps the SVG, will have a display of block, line height 0, width and height will be 20 pixel. The color will be the current color, and the margin will be 15 pixel. And I will add styles for once this div, in case if it's focused. So I'll make it also, I'll keep it visible with the, of course, with the hover style. So it will be as if it's hovered. So here I need to target, of course, here I'm targeting, I need to target the button. So I will target the button. Okay, if the button is focused, then I will make the div inside of it opacity, or the opacity will be 1 for it. So if as you can see, this was focused. So if I click on it, it will be focused, it will stay. If I unfocus from it, I click anywhere on the screen, it will go. So this is it for the button. Next, we need to add the functionality, the on click for the next and previous. Alright, so now we have created the arrow left and right. Next, we need to position them properly. So as you can see, they need to be, the position of the next and the previous, they need to be in relation to the slider. So adjacent to the active slider. In our case, they are on the far edges of the screen. So to do this, we'll set the left of the previous and the right of the next. So let's start with the previous. So here we have the button, the first child, which is the previous. We'll set its left to a calculation. So we need, the calculation will be the 100% of the screen minus the width of the slider divided by 2. This will give us, so it will position the left of the button here. Now we need to subtract from it the width of the button, which is with the padding 90 pixel, all right, but we need to remove from the 90 pixel the padding here for each slide, the 15 pixel, and the padding of one side 20 pixel. So 20 plus 15 here, which will be 35. So we need to subtract 90 from 35, which result in 55 pixels. So let's apply it. So here it will be 100 minus p dot slide width, which will get it in the prop, and divided by 2. All right. So this will get us the VW. Right now, from the size VW, we need to subtract the 55 pixel. All right. So this will get us the left. Now we need to have the slider width in the props. So we'll go to our slider.js and send it as we are doing for the track. Send it to the controls. All right. So this should position where it is here. This should position the arrow previous in the desired place, and here it is. All right. Now let's work on the next. The same calculation for the next, but we'll use the right instead of the left. Now the next we can target it with end child 2. All right, and we replace the left with right, so this should work. But as you can see, we have a problem. Now what is this problem here? Because we have a scroll. Now if we disable the scroll, so if I remove all the content at the bottom and with no scroll, it is working perfectly. Now adding the scroll, there is an error. So the wall actually positioning of the slider is not precise because this is not perfectly centered due to the scroll bar. Now to fix this, we need to get the size of the scroll bar in percentage and apply it to the slider here first. Second, we'll fix the based on the correct slider positioning, also we'll fix the previous and next positioning. So to get the correct scroll, all right, we'll create here a function in the slider. To get the scroll first, we'll create a state, we'll name it scroll bar %, and here set scroll bar %. Then we'll create a function set scroll bar or set scroll. Or this is a local function. We call it once we render the slider. So first I need to get the scroll width, and to get the scroll width I will subtract window dot inner width minus document dot body dot client width. So the window dot inner width will get the width of the window with the scroll bar, but document dot body dot client width will get the width of the body without the scroll bar. By subtracting the client width of the body from the inner width of the window, we'll get the difference between the two, which will be the scroll bar. Now we have the scroll width. Now we need to carry it in percentage. So here we get the scroll width for the inner width of the window. All right, now for 100%, how much it will be? So we multiply 100% by scroll width, and we'll divide it by the window dot inner width. All right. Then we set the scroll bar % to the scroll W %. All right. So this is it. Now we have the scroll bar %. We need to send it to first to the controller. All right. So we could position exactly the arrow previous and next. And for the wrapper, so we will position the UL exactly at the center, taking under consideration the scroll bar. Now to position the UL, and remember, here we are setting the UL for the initial slide, or so it would be centered, okay, without taking under consideration the scroll bar. Now, to take under consideration the scroll bar, we'll go here to the child of the wrapper, the UL, which we are setting the transform X to 100 minus 40, which is supposed to be the slider width, all right, divided by 2. So first, what we will do is transform this into a function, which will get from it the props in the parameters. All right. Now instead of typing here the 40, I prefer to get it in a prop, so it will be slider width or slide width. All right. Now 100% minus the slide width minus the scroll bar, which we have it in percentage, which work fine in this calculation. So we're subscribing from the 100% the slide width and the scroll bar %, then the result of this subtraction we divided by 2. All right, now since I'm having the p.scroll bar percent. I will apply it here. So all right, so we get here the scroll what? We get the slide width, all right, and we set the unit, which will be viewport width. Now we need to send, of course, for the wrapper, the slide width, which will be, for now we'll set it manually, we'll set it to 40. We'll create a function to calculate the slide width. Now here for the set scroll, actually we haven't called this function yet. We have created the function, but we had never called it. To call the set scroll, we can use the use effect. So use effect, we'll import first the hook use effect, and we'll use it. All right. So here we'll call the set scroll, which will set the scroll bar percent. All right. Concerning the dependency for the use effect, we'll provide an empty array, or still, but we have the dependency here. What we will do, we'll copy the function and put it inside the use effect, so it won't change each time this component render. All right. Okay. So now we expect to see the first slide to be perfectly centered. How we know? We know by checking the arrow next and arrow previous. Now they are. We know by their position that the slider is 100% centered. Now let's introduce the scroll to the calculation of the arrows. So in the control, here 100% minus p dot slide width minus p dot scroll bar percent, I guess the name, let me check the name, scroll bar percent. All right, scroll bar percent. Same for the next button. So now they are perfectly positioned against the slide. All right. Next, we need to create the functionality for this button. So we need to, once we click, it will go next and previous. Now to set the functionality of the controls next and previous, create two functions. Create a constant on previous should be equal to a function. So we check if slide index is more than 0. All right, then we'll decrease it by 1. We'll use the set slide index. What we need to do is to get the slide index and subtract it by 1. Now when you depend on the values that need to be changed, it's better to use the function syntax, which will get you the previous index. All right, if it's not more than 0, if it's 0 and we press the previous button, we'll slide the user to the end of the slide. So we'll set the slider index to slides.length minus 1 since it's 0 based. All right. Now the same way for the next. Now on next, we'll check if the slide index is lesser than the slides.length minus 1. All right. If that's the case, we'll increase the slide index by 1. Now if it's not the case, we'll set the slide index to 0. We'll slide the user back to the first slide. Right now on previous and on next we'll send it to the controls. So here I'll send it to the control as previous and next. So previous will be on previous and next will be on next. In my controls I'll add the on click to the button, which will be props.prev, and for the next button it will be prop.next. Alright, so if we try it in the browser, perfect, it is working as expected. Next we'll set the arrow on the keyboard, the left and right arrows, to control the slider. Alright, next we need to allow the user to navigate with the keyboard, the left and right buttons. So we'll add this functionality in the controls component. First we'll import the use effect, and we'll use it here. Alright, now inside the use effect I need to listen to the on key down. So I will add to the window.add event listener the key down. So once there's a key down, I need to run a function. I will call it on key down, that I will create in a moment, and I will remove this event once the component is destroyed by returning a function. That this function will run once this component has been destroyed. So window.remove event listener, I will give it the same signature as the add event listener. Now let's create the function on key down. Alright, so we get the event, of course. Alright, with the event we can check for the e.key. So if e.key is equal to arrow the left, alright, here arrow should be capital A, then we'll call the props.prev for arrow right, we'll call the prop.next. And that's it. Alright, this is it. This is not a capital N, so next is lowercase. Alright, so let's give it a try. Now if I click, alright, if I click the arrow next, it will go next. If I click back, it will go back. So I'm using here the keyboard arrow, left and right. Alright, now next we need to pause the video once the zoom is out from it. So, and we play it once it's active. It's the active slide. Now to pause the video once it is not the active slide, I need to go to the slide video. So this is a slide that represents a video. Here I need to import from React the use ref to get a reference to the video, and the use effect. Alright, so here what I will do is first I'll create a constant video ref, which will be equal to use ref. At the beginning it will be null as the default, so this is null, and I will assign it to the video element. So the ref will be here to video ref. Alright, next I need a variable that tells me whether the video is paused or not. This variable need to come from the props. So we will be expecting a prop called paused that is sent to this video. Now if it's true, the video need to be paused. If not, it will play. So I'll use effect here to check the value of pause and whether it has been changed. So the use effect will depend on the pause variable. So each time the prop paused change, we run this function that we provide here to use effect. So this function will use the video ref dot current dot pause if paused is true. All right, we'll pause the video, else we play the video. All right, so this is it for the slide video. Now I need, in my slider here where I'm displaying a video, once we have a video here, I need to send the whether it is paused or not. So I need to send a prop called paused, and the value of this prop need to be true if it's active, else false. So how do I know if whether this slide is active or not? It is easy. I can check for the E against the slide index. So if it's different, so here I'll check if I is not equal to the current index, which means this slide is not active or focus. So I'll set the pause to false. All right, let's reload again from the start. Now the video play automatically. If I go to the next slide, it is paused. If I go back, it will play again. Pause, play. So that is it. Next, we need to create the dots navigation. First, we'll create a file component. We'll name it dots.js, which will contain a functional component. So dots. All right, now for the HTML, for the structure of this component, we'll have as usual, I will import the styled from styled components, and I'll create here a component. I'll name it styled or wrapper, which will be a div with some styles that we'll define very shortly. Now I will use the wrapper here to wrap. This wrapper will wrap the label, but to how many label I need to create will be equal to how many slides there is. So I need these slides as in the props. So I need the slides array. All right, here I need to map through the slides array. All right, I need to get the index, but I don't need the actual slide information, so I will add underscore for the slide for the single slide information, and the I, which I need. All right, now I'm looking through the slides array, and for each loop I'll create a label. Now I'll add for the label a key, which will be the I. Inside the label there will be an input with type radio. Now the name for the input will be slides. All right, now the ID will be dynamic. Each one will have a unique ID, of course. Slider dash dot dash radio dash the I to make it unique. All right, now besides the input, of course, there will be a span. This span will be the actual dot that will be visible on the screen with a class name of dot. All right, so now for the radio, I need to set it to read only. The value will be the I, and concerning whether it's checked or not, we'll check we need to get the index as a prop. So we'll get the index for the selected slide, and here whether it's checked or not will depend on the index. So we'll check the I here, the local I for this loop, and we'll compare it to index. So if the I equal to index, it means this one is the selected dot. It match the active slide, so we'll check it. All right, and this is it for the structure. Next we'll need to style it. Now let's import the dots in the slider and give it the slides and the index. So let's do this now. Here I will import dots from, and I will use it below in the wrapper, so it will be inside the wrapper, outside the slider. So in the wrapper I'll add the dots. I'll give it first the slides, which will be 2 slides, then the index, which will be 2 slide index, and finally the set index, which will be equal to set slide index. All right, so we'll make sure all is correct. So here we have the all right, all is good. All right, now we have a mistake as I got in the console. Of course, here it needs to return something. All right, so we need to return here the label. All right, now if I check the browser, here I can see the input radio, the radio button. If I click next, I can see the check is working. It's working as expected. Now let's add with the click functionality. Let's style it first, then add the click functionality. Now concerning the styles, first the wrapper will be styled, will have a 100% width. The display will be flex and centered, and centering its content vertically and horizontally. Now for the label, it will have a padding of 5 pixels from top and bottom, and 10 pixels from left and right. The cursor will be pointer. The display will be flex and centering both vertically and horizontally. Here we're adding a focus within to the label, which means that if the label or any child element is focused, we'll set a border of 1 pixel and gray-white color. So this is for the label. Next we'll be setting for the label also the before pseudo element. The before pseudo element will have a position absolute and will be displayed as a block. We'll set the width and height to 40 pixels. That's it. What does this pseudo element before serve us? It will increase the area of the tab. So it will be a much bigger area for clicking or tapping if it's on mobile, which make it easy to interact with these small dots. All right. Then once the label has been hover, so we'll add a on hover. So if we hover the label, the before will have an increased index, Z index. So it will be on top of the others, and the dot will have an opacity 1. Right? As you will see later, the dot will animates with the opacity. So here, in case there's an hover, the dot will have an opacity of 1, and the before element, as I told you, this will play as a clickable area or a tab area. Here we'll set it to index 9 to facilitate the navigation for the user. So it will be easy to point at the needed dot. All right. Now for the input, All right, for the input, we'll set a clip path which will mask the input totally from the screen, so we won't be seeing the input. All right, the clip path will not remove it, but will just mask it. It will be there, but masked. And we set the overflow to hidden, so the mask will be applied. This is necessary if you want to use the clip path. Now the clip path is the new rule. This one is an old one and is deprecated, but we can keep it for older browsers. All right. Now for the position, it will be absolute. The width will be 5 and the height will be 5. Next, we'll style the span dot, which contains the visuals for the user. So it will have a color of white, some gray white. The transition will be applied to the opacity with an ease in out timing function. The width will be 4, the height will be 4.2, the border radius will be 100%, so it will be of course circle. Now the background color will be current color, which will use this color here. And for the opacity, it will have an opacity at the beginning of 0.3. So that's why we are setting here on hover, we are setting the opacity for the dot to 1 when we hover the label. All right. So it will have by default opacity of 0.3. The display will be inline block and the position relative. All right, let's go have a look. So as you can see, they are our dots. Now if I hover, okay. All right, once we add the click functionality, you will see how they are easy to interact, especially for their small size. Next we'll continue working on the dot. This time we'll be adding a before for the dot. This will create like a halo for the dot. For the for the active dot only. So the before will have a transition for the transform, which will have a transform. Let me put this transition below. It will have a transform translate -50 and -50 and scale 0. So here we need to animate the scale. The display will be block, position absolute, top 50, left 50%. Width and height will be 10 pixel. Border radius 100%. Now the border for pixel solid. The color will be, of course, will be inherited from, since we didn't set the color for the border, we inherited here from the span dot, which will be white, grayish white, gray white. The opacity will be 0.1. And at the beginning it will be hidden, so scale will be 0. It will only be visible for the checked input. So if I go here and add styles for the span dot, alright, this is the end of span dot. So for the label here I will add for the label. All right, label, I will target the child of input, the radio button, and if it's checked and if it's checked, I will target its sibling span dot. I will make its opacity 1 as it is hover, and the before here I will change the transform from translate -50 to 50 pixel and the scale 0. I will change it to scale 1, which will be now visible. So if we check in the browser, all right, this is the active one. You can see it has some halo around it. Okay. All right. So we haven't added the click functionality. So, but if I navigate here, I can see it change. All right. All right. This is it for the style. Next, we'll need to add the click functionality. Here we have the set index. which will be used for the click functionality. Here we create a constant. We'll name it handle change, or on change you can name it, which will be with a function that gets the event. Inside of it, we'll set the index to the value of the clicked input. So we'll set the index to e.target.value, and we'll to make it a number. All right, this is it. So the handle change will be applied to the label. So on the label, we'll check on change, and we'll give it the handle change function. So now if I click, as you can see now, it is working. You see how it is easy to navigate concerning the small dots. All right, that's it for the dots. Next, we need to resize the slider depending on the screen. So to keep the slider the main focus on the screen, but at the same time to keep some focus on the what's next. Next, the height of the slider need to fill the screen minus the header, and 120 pixels from the bottom. So we need to define the width of the slide to have this requirement. Here in this picture here I prepared, first we need to get the needed height of the slider. We'll get this by subtracting the header plus the 120 pixel from the button minus the window height. Once we get the needed height, we can get the needed width in relation to the image ratio. Here we have it 16 by 9. So once we get the width in pixel, we will transform it into percentage in relation to the windows. So let's do this function that calculates the width of the slider. First, we'll create the function. We call it get slide width. All right. First, we define a constant. We'll name it bottom space, which defines the 120 pixel space from the bottom. And next, then we'll calculate the needed height, which will be the window.inner height minus the slider offset top and the bottom space. Here we need the slider ref, which we are getting it using the hook use ref. And if you check the wrapper here, I'm setting the slider ref to the wrapper, so it will reference the wrapper element, and then I will get the offset top from the current of the slider ref. So here we got the needed height. We need now the needed width in relation to the image ratio. To get the needed width, we need to multiply the needed height by the image ratio, which is 1980 by. So now concerning this ratio here, next we need to calculate the needed width in percentage this time, in relation in percentage in relation to the width of the screen. So to do this, we'll multiply the needed width by the ratio of the screen 100%. So 100 here divided by document.body.client width. All right. So here I'm considering the window width minus the scroll bar in case there is a scroll bar. 100% divided by the current window width in pixels multiplied by needed width will get me the needed width in percentage. Finally, I will return the needed width. Now, to call this function, I need to use a use effect. Alright, this use effect will call the get slider width inside the set slide index. So first, I will set the slide index to the result of get slide width. So this will be called when the component first render. As you can see, we have here an empty array, but we have a dependency, the get slider width. Now the empty array will prevent the use effect, this function here, from be called more than one time once the component first render. But the problem here, we haven't defined this get slider width in the array of dependency. So, but if I define the get slider width here, it will be called each time the component render. Why? Because this function here will be rendered, or more appropriately will be redefined each time the component render. So what I will do here to prevent this, I will use the callback, the use callback hook. So use callback hook will allow me to create a function, define a function, won't be recreated whenever the component render, unless there is a dependency which I defined, unless it is dependent on some variable which I will be defining in the array. For our case, I will provide an empty array. This way it will render only, it will be defined only one time. So in the life of the component, from the moment it is created till the moment it is destroyed, this function is defined only one time, the first time. So this way will assure that the function in the use effect here will run only one time. Alright, so now I'm setting the get slider width, and I'm already using it. Oh, I'm not using it. So let's use the slide width instead of the hard-coded 40 value. And let's make sure we have, alright, we haven't defined the state, so we need a state which we'll call it slide width. Alright, by default I will set it to 80% of the screen. So this is the slide width. Alright, get slide width here, set slide width. I'm sorry if I confused you here. This should be the new state that we have defined, the set slide width, which also need to be capital. Alright. Alright, so let's try it. Alright, as you can see, the width seem to be okay. No, okay. If I reload here, alright, as you can see, it is adapting to the height of the screen here, which is good. Alright, what about now? As you can see, this is too much, so we need to define a limit to the height of the slide. So I will go back in my get slide width function, and here the needed height need not to be less than a certain limit. So I will check if needed height. So I will check if needed height is less than 400. Then I will set it to 400. This way I won't allow it to be less than 400. And then I need to change the needed height from a constant to a normal variable. So as you can see now, it won't be less than 400 pixel. All right. All right, perfect. All right. Now we need the slider to resize on window resize. So when I resize the window, I need the slider to adapt its size, its width. So I want to create an event on window resize. This event need to be inside the use effect that will create this event only once and destroy it once the component has been destroyed. So to create the event, I will use the Windows and event listener, the resize, and define a function on resize. Here I'll define the constant on resize, which will be an arrow function. All right, now inside this function, I need to set the slide width to the result of the get slide width function. All right, and I will return a function here, which will be called once the component has been destroyed. This function will remove the event listener, which I'll give it the same signature. This will be the signature of this event. So this way we can remove the event once the component has been destroyed. Now concerning the resizing, the ratio this function will be called is maybe too much for such an activity here. So we'll set a bounce which will prevent this function from called more than once per 150 millisecond. First, I'll define a variable timeout ID. Next, I'll create a set timeout, which have a function that will call the set this here operation that we need each 100 after 150 millisecond, or let's make it 100 millisecond. All right, and we'll set the value returned by the set timeout, which is the ID of the set timeout, to the variable timeout ID. And each time the onResize function is called, we'll clear first the clear timeout. We'll clear this timeout. So what is happening here is that this function onResize, all right, will be called when you resize the window several times per second, maybe 60 times or 100 times. Each time it is called, we'll create a set timeout. We won't immediately run this operation. We wait for 100 milliseconds and then we run the operation. So this way it will guarantee for us that each 100 millisecond this operation will run, not more. So let's check our browser. Now if we resize, as you can see, it is moving, all right, till a minimum of 400 pixel height. So it won't be less than 400. Once it is 400, it will stop. All right. Now we need to add another restriction concerning the slider width. All right, we set the slider width not to exceed 80% of the screen. For example, in some situation where the screen is more squarish than wide or portrait, as you can see, the slider width is exceeding the 80% or 90%. Here it is. It has broken the style we have of the slider. So look what will happen here. It is totally exceeded the 100% width of the screen. So we'll set here a restriction to maximum, allows the slider to 80%. So here in our function, the get slide width, we'll add the restriction here for the needed width. So here at the end, we'll check if needed width percent is more than 80, all right, then we'll set it, we'll force it to be 80. So it won't exceed 80% of the screen. So now if I test again, oops, I got an error because I'm changing a constant. I'll transform it into a normal variable. All right. Okay, as you can see, now our first restriction, the bottom space 120, has been discarded in favor of keeping the slide not to exceed 80% of the screen, which is awesome. This is the behavior that we need. All right. Now there will be also another condition or restriction. Here, as you can see, the slider, all right, is adjusting to be always 80%, but in some cases, here is good. Always here is good. Now, once we reach the 1000 pixel, it starts to become a little bit small. So we'll add a restriction. So if it's less than 1024 pixel, so if the screen is less than 1024 pixel, we'll make the slider to be 100%. So on iPad, on mobile, the slider will be 100%. So we'll check if window dot inner width is less than 1024, then we'll set the needed percent to 100 pixel. So now if I check again, as you can see, it is 100 pixel till I exceed the 1024 pixel. All right, once I exceed the 1024 pixel, it will return to our normal calculation where we leave 120 pixel at the bottom. Now all is good, but we have one issue. Once we reach the 100% size, as you can see, the arrow is not accessible. So let's fix this. So here in our controls.js, where we are rendering the arrows, here we are calculating the left and right respectively for each arrow. Now what we will do, we'll set a media query for the 1024 pixel width, and here we'll set the left to 0 for the previous arrow, and the same for the next, but for the right we'll set it also to 0. So this will fix it. All right, it's great. The slider is supposed to show on hover, but some screen like the iPad and mobiles don't have the hover effect, so you need to click to be able to see the arrows, which is somewhat not really, in my opinion, it's not user friendly. So to fix this, I'll add another media query that will allow me to check if the device has the hover functionality, has some device where the user can hover an element. So here for the div, where I'm setting the opacity to 0, which will hide it, I will add the media query for the hover, and I will hide it only if there's the hover functionality available. So now here if I reload, all right, it will be always visible here on the device where there is no hover. Now if there is hover, as you can see, it will be visible. It will be hidden once by default. So once the mouse is hovering, it will show. Now we need for the sliders that are not active to have opacity 0.3. Only the active one will have the full opacity, or once we hover the one on the sides. So let's do this. Here in our slider JS, we go to the LI and we'll set the opacity here by default to 0.3. Then we'll check if there's a class active or if there's a hover. We'll set the opacity to 1. Now we need to add the class active. Now we need to set the class active for the active slide. Here in our LI, we'll add the class name and we'll make a check if the current I of this loop is equal to the slide index. So if it match, then this slide is the active one. In that case, we'll set the class, we'll add the class active. If not, we won't add any class. So now if I go to my browser and have, okay, as you can see, only the active one has full opacity. The others have 0.3 opacity, but if I hover, they have full opacity. Now concerning the slide, we want to make the border radius about 4 pixels. So back to my slider component. Here, concerning the structure of each slide, we need to wrap the slide with a div. So I'll wrap it with a div. All right, and I will target the div to add the border radius. So back in my CSS, here I will target the div inside the LI and I will add the border radius of 4 pixels. Then I will make the overflow hidden, so nothing will get past the border radius. Now if we check, we got our border radius, which is working on all sides, which is good. If we go to the video and make sure also the video has a border radius. All right, this method, as you can see, we added the div, so it work whatever is the media displayed. Now remember, concerning the resizing, there is one issue that we can detect once we resize. All right, once we resize from scroll to no scroll, as you can see, the position of the arrow is off. All right, so if I go from scrolling to no scroll, it's off. If I refresh, it will be set properly. Now if I go back to the scroll, so all right, here we have a scroll. As you can see, it is off, so it is not automatically adjusting for the scroll when the window is resized. So let's fix this. Back again to our slider.js. This is actually a very quick fix. Here we are in some place. Here we are defining a function that set the scroll width, return to us the scroll width percentage, and set our scroll bar %. So first thing we want to do is to make this function available to the component. Then we will call the set scroll, not inside its own use effect. We will call it every time we call the get slide width. So it will be called on the resizing event. So this way we'll make sure every time we resize the window, the scroll bar will get calculated. Here we, in the scroll bar percent state, we will get the correct value, whether there is or there is no scroll bar. So now I can test to make sure this update is working properly. So here, if I resize, all right, as you can see, it is in the right position. All right, very good. Now for the mobile resolution, also we'll set it also for the iPad. So for the resolution less than 767 pixel, we will disable the sliding effect, and we'll add a button that will toggle the rest of the image's visibility. So we'll show only the first slide or the first media, and we'll create a button that once clicked will display the other images vertically. All right, so let's create first the button. So I'll create a new file that will contain a component. I will name it mobile expand.js. Now inside this component, I will pass the code for this button. Using the styled components, I will add some style to a button. As you can see, the width will be 100% minus 30% pixel for the margin. So it will have margin left and right. The background color will be transparent white. The color will be white, transparent. Also, the padding 15 pixel from top and bottom, font size 16 pixel, font weight bold, cursor will be pointer. At the beginning, or by default, the display will be none. So for resolution more than 767, the display will be none. Only for resolution 767 or less, this button will be displayed. Next, this component will expect a state that is called mobile expand. This state variable will tell this component whether the media or the slider is expanded or not. So based on this value, we'll display the message on the button. If it's expanded, we'll display show less. If not, we'll display show the total slides more. For example, show 7 more. All right. Now we need, of course, the total slide also to get the minus the first one, which will be by default visible. We'll add an on-click event, of course, to set this variable, the mobile expand, using the function provided us in the props. So we'll set it to the contrary of its current value. So if it's true, we'll set it to false, and vice versa. All right, so this is the component. Now we need to import it in the slider. So I'll import, and I'll use it as the last element of the slider inside the wrapper. So below the dots, I will add the mobile expand component. Now, as you know, I need to give it the required props. One or two of these required props require us to create a new state. So let's create a new state. It will be named mobile expand. Here it will be set mobile expand. By default, it will be, of course, 0. Then we'll send these two values to our mobile expand component. All right. Then we need the total slides. Total slide will be sliders dot length. All right, it's slides dot length. And slides, actually, it's defined in our app.js, which is the array defined here in the data folder. So it's an array of media items. So this is the mobile expand button. All right, now if we have a look, all right, as you can see, here is our button. Now if we click, the state will change, but we haven't yet applied it for the slider. Next, before we apply it, we need to remove the arrows and the dots navigation. So in the dot, we'll create a media query at the top, all right, which will set the display to none in case we're on mobile. So we set it to 767. All right. The same we'll do for the controls. We hide it if we're on mobile or iPad. All right, perfect. Next, we need to, once we click on the button, we need to show the rest of the slides. So this will happen in the slider.js. So here for the UL first, for the UL we need to disable the transform. We don't need transform. The display also. Now for the display, we can set the display to block, or we can set the display, we can keep it flex and set it to no row, or set the direction to column instead of row, but display block will do the trick. Next, we'll add a media query to the LI, setting the opacity always to 1. By default, the display will be none, except for the first one. So we'll target the first child. And set the display to block. All right. Now concerning the display none is not correct. So it depends on the expand mobile state here. Mobile expand, I mean. Now if this state is true, we need to show all the LI. So we need to use it here in our style sheet. So in the wrapper component. So we need to send it to the wrapper component, which is here. All right, what we can do here to reduce the typing, we can do it in this syntax, which is less typing. All right, it's one line. All right. Now we have the mobile expand in the wrapper component where we are defining our style sheet. We can use it here in the LI, P for props. So we'll check for p dot mobile expand. If it's true, then we'll set it to block, else we'll set it to none. So if we go and check, if I type now the show 7 more, whoop, I will have the rest of the slider 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Show less, it will be hidden. All right, this is it. All right, so far so good. We have done most of the functionality needed. Still, I have noticed one more issue here. So if you see, while I'm resizing the slider, there is some jumping happening, and this jumping is the effect of the transition we have added to the track. So back to our track.js, here we have a transition for the transform. Now when you resize the window, the slider is resizing and the positioning is changing, which will translate in the style track animation. So what we want to do, we want to have in the slider here, we want to have a state that will tell us when the user is resizing the window, and disable, in case the window is being resized, disable the transition. So first, let's set this state here in our slider.js. So we create a new state, we'll name it window resizing. All right, and the window resizing will need to be, by default it is false, but need to be true once the user is resizing the window. And once the user is resizing the window, we are calling the onResize function. So here we can set it to true, which inform us that the resizing is happening. All right, and we need to send it to the track. All right, which is window resizing, so that we inform the track that the window is resizing. Please stop the transition animation. So here in the track, all right, we'll check for the, all right, not the window resizing, p.window resizing, sorry, and if it's true, we'll use the CSS function provided by styled component, which we need to import it. All right, now with CSS we can add additional styles that will be combined with the main styles. So here we'll set the transition to none. All right, which will stop the animation. Now if I go back to my browser and test it now it look smooth, so it doesn't jump anymore. But what we have the animation disabled on the navigation and on the dots. This is because we have set the animation to false. So if we go back to our slider.js, we need to activate again the animation. The best place to do this, all right, the best place to do this is in the on previous. So when the user click on previous and on next, we'll activate the animation again first thing before processing the functions. And for the dots, we need to send the set window resizing for the dots. And in the dots, okay, we can run it here and enable again the animation. Of course, we need to destructure it from the props. So now if I test, all right, if I resize, then I click next, the animation is working. Perfect. All right, it seems we have an issue here. So once we go from desktop to mobile, oh, it seems it's working. So what is the issue? Oh, once we navigate the slider and resize to mobile version, we have an issue. Let's fix this. Now when we resize, it's in the track. We need to add a query for the track. Let's copy the query here from the control. So in the track, we need to add a query. We need to disable, of course, the transform. So we set to transform to none. This way, now if I reload and navigate the slides, if I resize to mobile, all right, it will be reset to the first slide. Perfect. All right, now we have done. This video has finished. We have finished working on the slider. I wish you had a great learning experience or experience building this slider. And if you like this video, please give it a thumb up, and don't forget you can subscribe to my channel to see more of these front-end workshops. Thank you and see you soon.